partnered on the documentary with the BBC, so there was a lot of things that we had to do before the documentary would have even taken place, before all the undercover work could happen. There was a lot of groundwork that needed to be done to build the case to that point.
So for those who have not been in touch with what's happening, universities in Nigeria, of course, we all know, have been plagued with stories of sexual harassment and violence. Well, harassment more than violence, but harassment nonetheless by lecturers and professors for decades. It's no news in the system. If you went to a Nigerian university in fact, I want to say between a certain time, but that's not true, because it's been happening for decades, and it's still happening, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
Allegations have spanned across abuse, blackmail, sex in exchange for marks, admission to lewd comments, grooming, so many things under the guise of so many other things, you know? And after gathering dozens of testimonies, the BBC Africa Eye sent an undercover journalist, Kiki Modi, to University of Lagos, posing as an incoming student trying to gain admission to the university.
Yeah, actually, it was a journalist that we would like to call Kemi. Kemi went undercover, and this was Kiki's story to tell, because Kiki is one of the many Nigerian women who have had to drop out because they were getting sexually harassed. So Kiki even getting sexually harassed within the project of this documentary just tells you the scale of things, because Kiki was just on campus, and with the rest of the team, she was just standing waiting for the other lecturer called Kemi to press a panic button. And as she was standing right there, a lecturer saw her and, dragged her to his office. And that was the second lecturer that was exposed on the documentary.
Exposed in the documentary.
Right. So that was not even planned. We didn't even know of that lecturer, but he just showed himself. That's just how casual sexual harassment is in universities.
Do you find it strange that none of these headlines have been met with shock?
I don't find it strange, because it's something we've all known. It's something we've normalized to a very large extent, and it's something that we've just put to the side of things. We forget that these girls in question have futures. We forget that these girls in question are human beings. We also forget that the people that are doing these things are human beings as well. Like, these lecturers have daughters. They have children, but they still do these things just so casually. And I'm not surprised that people are not shocked about it, because we all went through it in one degree or the other.
Without calling names where it's necessary, the documentary definitely adds a voice on how deep the rape and molestation culture is embedded in the Nigerian system and even in our psyche.
Right.
You hear a lot about difficult, lecturers, difficult in the sense that they take pleasure in setting tough examinations so that the students fail, and then they have no choice but to come, maybe trying to solicit to resit or whatever, and then they put these women or whatever in a situation where they now have to be on the begging end or on the losing end of things, so to speak.
Yeah, I like how we talk about it and we say things like, oh, women, like, these people they fail or they're in certain situations. That's not always the case, but that's the narrative that a lot of people would like to believe. It's almost like a justification for these kind of actions when you believe that the person was a bad student. So it's almost like...
It's better. Thank you so much for being a part of the show.
To talk about. We have a really interesting guest right now in studio for our first segment. But before I get to that, a couple of things that have happened all week. We touched on last week Vector and MI, and that's come back. There's been a little bit of a response from Vector. Vector has responded to MI. I'm sure if you've been following social media, you and found that out. There's been, of course, one of the biggest cases that has broken in this decade as far as the education sector in Nigeria is concerned. And I'm talking about, of course, the Sexforgrades scandal that broke by a BBC undercover reporter. And it's been very interesting, to say the least, on social media space, in the news space, and so on and so forth. And without further ado, I would like to welcome my guest to the studio, Miss Awazi Angbalaga. I thought I was going to get it. I'm so sorry. I murdered it at the last second.
Okay.
Where are you from?
I'm from Nasarawa State.
That's a beautiful name.
Thank you so much.
And you're a beautiful woman.
Thank you. So are you?
Welcome. Thank you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And I celebrate you International Girl Child.
Thank you.
We are all international girl
too.
children. Thank you. So let's get into it. Before I move further, Awazi is an advocate for women, a women advocate against rape, of course, sexual violence against women. And you're also an OAP.
Yes, I am.
As well as
just a media personality.
A media personality, exactly. And you're part of the investigation that went down.
Yes, in a little capacity. I volunteer with an NGO called Stand to End Rape.
Okay.
And Stand
That's
to End
STARE.
Yes,
STER.
Yes, and they partnered on the documentary with the BBC. So there was a lot of things that we had to do before the documentary would have even taken place, before all the undercover work could happen. There was a lot of groundwork that needed to be done to build the case to that point.
So for those who have not been in touch with what's happening, universities in Nigeria, of course, we all know have been plagued with stories of sexual harassment and violence. Well, harassment more than violence, but harassment nonetheless by lecturers and professors for decades. It's no news in the system. If you went to a Nigerian university in fact, I want to say between a certain time, but that's not true because it's been happening for decades, and it's still happening as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
Allegations have spanned across abuse, blackmail, sex in exchange for marks, admission to lewd comments, grooming, so many things under the guise of so many other things, you know? And after gathering dozens of testimonies, the BBC Africa Eye sent an undercover journalist, Kiki Modi, to University of Lagos, posing as an incoming student trying to gain admission to the university.
Yeah, actually, it was a journalist that we would like to call Kemi. Kemi went undercover, and this was Kiki's story to tell, because Kiki is one of the many Nigerian women who have had to drop out because they were getting sexually harassed. So Kiki even getting sexually harassed within the project of this documentary just tells you the scale of things, because Kiki was just on campus, and with the rest of the team, she was just standing waiting for the other lecturer called Kemi to press a panic button. And as she was standing right there, a lecturer saw her and, dragged her to his office. And that was the second lecturer that was exposed on the documentary.
Exposed in the documentary.
Right. So that was not even planned. We didn't even know of that lecturer, but he just showed himself. That's just how casual sexual harassment is in universities.
Do you find it strange that none of these headlines have been met with shock?
I don't find it strange, because it's something we've all known. It's something we've normalized to a very large extent, and it's something that we've just put to the side of things. We forget that these girls in question have futures. We forget that these girls in question are human beings. We also forget that the people that are doing these things are human beings as well. Like, these lecturers have daughters. They have children, but they still do these things just so casually. And I'm not surprised that people are not shocked about it, because we all went through it in one degree or the other.
Without calling names where it's necessary, the documentary definitely adds a voice on how deep the rape and molestation culture is embedded in the Nigerian system and even in our psyche.
Right.
You hear a lot about difficult, lecturers, difficult in the sense that they take pleasure in setting tough examinations so that the students fail, and then they have no choice but to come, maybe trying to solicit to resit or whatever, and then they put these women or whatever in a situation where they now have to be on the begging end or on the losing end of things, so to speak.
Yeah, I like how we talk about it and we say things like, oh, women, like, these people they fail or they're in certain situations. That's not always the case, but that's the narrative that a lot of people would like to believe. It's almost like a justification for these kind of actions when you believe that the person was a bad student. So it's almost like you feel like because you're a bad student, that's why your lecturer will take advantage of you. That's a lie. Most of the time, in fact, almost all the time, you don't have to fail. You don't have to do anything. You just have to be. Just as a student, you're at risk. Like, you don't even need to have a reason to go to your lecturer's office. They will find the reason for you. lecturers usually would find the reason for you to be in that vulnerable position. And because they know that they have the power to fail you or pass you, and to some large extent, they have the power to keep you back within the university for years and years.
Times that she would get ahead. And eventually, he was prosecuted last year, and he was sentenced for 2 years. I don't know if a lot of people know this. He was sentenced for 2 years to prison. Now, in my opinion, 2 years is something of a slap on the wrist. Absolutely, because this is someone who has made a culture out of exploiting young females. Now, the undercover reporter in this case, that is in the University of Lagos sting that happened, because there were two. There was the University of Lagos and the University of Ghana. The girl who was posing as the incoming student, she posed as a 17-year-old student coming into the university, hadn't even gained admission yet. And this lecturer, Dr.
Boniface.
Thank you. Dr. Boniface was trying to assist her in getting admission into the university. Now, in cases like this where the lecturers happen to penetrate, for lack of a better word, penetrate these girls and penetrate their psyche and start sleeping with them as early as 17. Can you imagine that carrying on till she's like 21, 22, and you come out of a system and you're essentially broken and you have this mental idea that this is how life works. You have to exchange your body to be able to get ahead. What do you think that this says about our society now? Because there are so many cases of people who are living their lives this way. How can this damage be undone?
I think that it says a lot that as a society, we wouldn't even have the liver to call it what it is. In Lagos State, the legal age of consent is 18. As a lecturer, you're not sleeping with a 17-year-old. That is statutory rape. So in the first place, you're taking advantage of your office. There's already a power imbalance. This is illegal, even within the school premises. It's illegal in the state and the entire country. You're raping an underage child. And it just goes on and on. Like, as a country, we're already in a place of, I would say that now women are speaking up more and trying to fight and get forward. But to be fair and to be completely honest, we're in a place where women are disserviced. Now, this case of Dr. Boniface, I'll tell you what, there's so much that did not make the actual documentary because evidence had to be put forward. I'll tell you for a fact that what we did with Dr. Boniface was exactly what he did to one of our survivors. If you watch the documentary, there's someone that talks about trying to kill herself over 10 times because of this man. That's exactly what he did to her. Met her in the church, like his church where he pastors, and she was looking to get into school, and that's exactly what happened. We saw it in the documentary. It was shown. That's just one woman out of hundreds and thousands. I don't know if just exclusive to this lecturer, but like other lecturers in question. That's just one woman. And that's only in one institution. That's only in one space, education. What happens when you come to look for jobs? What happens for promotions? Let
me ask you, because you work as a volunteer, you work in media and you also work as a volunteer, and so you've seen so much. What do you think parents can do, or how can parents help their children build resilience?
I think parents, more importantly than anything, parents have to believe their children. It's a very painful situation when you're talking to a child and the first thing they tell you is, anyways, like, why would I even talk about this when nobody's going to believe me? They're going to say that I did this. They're going to say I did. And also, like, since this BBC documentary dropped, there have been allegations that, you know, the lecturer was seduced or all of those things.
But how could he have been seduced if he was this was an investigation? It was a sting. Like,
you tell me.
It was.
You tell me. I don't know. Like, it was there on camera.
She's not even a student.
She was resisting him. If you even saw.
Of course she was.
Definitely offered
Absolutely.
himself. So, like, what I'm saying is, parents need to believe their children. Parents need to take this very seriously. When your child tells you that someone is doing something to them that you know is wrong, don't tell them and calm down. Don't worry, it is all right. As a parent, I know it's very hard. I know it's not going to be the easiest thing, but you need to fight as far and as hard as you can for your child. That is your child. You need to make the world a better place for them than it was for you. I think that's the entire purpose of being a parent.
I know that you have a personal story yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, would you mind sharing a little bit of that if it's not too heavy for you?
No, it wasn't even a heavy story. I think I was one of the lucky few. I was 16 at the time. I had just gotten into the university and I was saying, oh, you know, there are different options because I studied mass communication, and then there were different options: public relations and advertising, broadcasting, print. I already knew that print was not for me. I had explored broadcasting a little bit as a child, and I said, okay, I would love to, you know, maybe be a host. But something else was interesting to me: public relations and advertising. But at the time, a lecturer in the University of Lagos who is, because he still is, who is known very well for being one of the key lecturers in that department, looked at me and asked me how old I was, asked me, you know, made comments about my body, asked me about my sex life at 16, and invited me out to go on dates. And I was flabbergasted, I was surprised, I was shocked. This same, like, invited me out to the staff club.
To the staff club with the supposed cold room.
Oh, yes.
So is the cold room a real place? I mean, that's a silly question because I went to Unilag and I do know of the staff quarters, the staff club, and I know that they had like private quarters upstairs.
Yes.
I just never knew that he had a real
Yes,
code name.
I think that is most Unilag lecturers would ask their students on dates too, like a staff club or something. It was such a mysterious place, but this documentary kind of demystified a little bit, a little extent of it, telling us about the place called the cold room. Because to the most part, like, most students would know that if a lecturer asked you out to this, you know, senior staff club, you already know what's up. Like, you already know what's going on. I was just lucky enough to avoid this lecturer.
So how were you able to escape your situation?
Oh, I compromised my entire choices for my education. I literally just, from that moment on, I started to make decisions like that I didn't need to make. I started to avoid all courses this man was taking. And I've lived with my what ifs forever, because I avoided public relations and advertising till I left the university. I went to broadcasting, which was taught by many more female lecturers. But what if I was supposed to be a PR or advertising mogul? I think about that a lot. Like, what if I would have excelled more in this field? I agree, and I thank God for the way things have turned out. But what about the other girls that didn't have the privilege of, you know, avoiding these situations? Like, you're in university to learn. If you have to compromise your education by avoiding a lecturer till you graduate, that is a disservice to the girl child.
Absolutely.
That is a distraction. That is a compromise to your entire degree. So what if you could be better? What if you could take these opportunities and do something more with them? But you can't, because one person or one human being has decided to target you, and then now you feel like, oh, I have to do this, I have to avoid. It's just not helpful. They're in school to get an education, and they should get that.
How far do you think this documentary and the conversations that have surrounded it will go in creating a more safe and conducive space against molestation and rape culture on campuses and beyond?
I'm very proud to say that I was a tiny little part of this project, but I'm also very proud of the reactions we've gotten across the continent. I know that there was a sexual harassment in tertiary institutions bill that was moved in 2016, did not get passed into law.
Yeah.
Yes, and all of that stuff. But the conversations are resurrecting. Now we see that the Ninth Assembly is interested in this. The president just put out a tweet yesterday, and he said, you know what? He supports this. So I think that it's important that that bill be passed. So we know that even institutions that don't have strong sexual harassment policies, this bill exists for a reason. And if a student can report through the channels, they go to report. Also, if that bill is passed, we know that the student will be protected, because it's a tenet in the bill that the student not be victimized, and whoever is caught victimizing the student gets the same
Matter of fact,
punishment.
It's not even about the victimization. They're not even allowed to have sexual relations.
Oh, 100%. But we also know that it's
they
very
can't even
hard.
be in relationships.
Yes. But we also know that it's very hard as a student. The reason why many of our survivors couldn't report is because they were afraid. There's so much at stake. Once you report, every other lecturer that is the lecturer's friend is going to victimize you.
It's going to victimize you. It's going to like mark you.
Exactly.
You're going to be on their radar in the most negative ways.
Exactly.
And they probably have a network.
Yeah, you're probably not going to graduate. You're probably just going to be there forever.
Why are we not seeing more female students coming out now to say there's more? This man did this to me, and that person did this to me, and this lecturer is away, and that lecturer is away.
Like I said, there's just so much at stake. And from the testimonies we got, like for this documentary alone, there was a 55,000 word document on testimonies just so we could go forward with this. And there are students who are currently in the university. The scale of this is large, but what is at stake of them is also large, because the bill has not been passed still. UNILAG just introduced, that's just UNILAG, one institution, just introduced the sexual harassment policy. Do you see that other institutions have not done that yet? There is still so much for the students at stake. They're afraid. They might not graduate. They might have to drop out. They might be in trouble. Like in extreme cases, your life might be threatened. So it is actually a very scary place to be as a student.
And this brings me to another question. What are the universities doing decisively? I mean, you're passing I'm sorry, this is so emotional for me
understand.
as well, because anyway, forget about why it's emotional for me right now. Bring it back. Let me bring it back, Natasha. What are the universities doing decisively to take action against this lecturer? So we know that Dr. Boniface has been expelled from his position at suspended from his position at Foursquare Gospel Church. How about University of Lagos? What have they done to him right now? What has happened so far?
Suspended him as well.
Okay.
Yes, and the other lecturer has been suspended as well. But like, you and me both are sitting here and wondering what the universities are doing decisively.
Yes.
It's going to be a very
because
interesting
swift and decisive action should be taken, must be taken, to be able to show the students that their well-being, their safety, their mental health is being taken care of, is priority.
Yeah, both universities, the University of Ghana and the University of Lagos, have suspended all the lecturers that were caught in this sting. So that's that. But it's easy to do a little thing here and there when you're in a PR nightmare as a university.
Absolutely.
So what are you going to do for people that are going to come out to speak? That's what we're here for. It's important that these universities have structures, functioning third-party institutions within the university that check and make sure that whatsoever policy they have is implemented, whatsoever law is in place is implemented. It is very important to have these conversations and these things in place for the students. Dr.
Richard Akindele, that's the lecturer in Ife who was prosecuted and now serving his jail time, 2 years. He was taken down and he's serving 2 years now. Society, family, and all of that come with that baggage. It's interesting to me that you never find like open statements of apology or remorse from these people. Why do you think it is? Is it because like you're sorry you got caught, or you think they're sorry for what they really did, or it's just because they got caught?
Oh no, they're only sorry they got caught. And honestly, like when you think about the OAU lady situation, she didn't have the power of such a powerful media house backing her up. So when she came out, a lot of people did not believe her. It's actually a testimony that she got any justice at all. Like it is such a big situation. It's a big problem because when these people get caught, they're not sorry that they did it. They don't see it as a problem. To them, it's just an additional, a little extra to their job description. Oh yeah, this is one of the perks of the job. They don't see it as harassment, they don't see it as a problem. They just see it as one of those things.
Thank you so much, Awazi. I wish we could talk more about this. Nigeria, we have to go on a quick break, but we'll be right back.